So it's about 8 a.m. in the morning. It's Monday the 16th of June 2019. It is the once every year Sagittarian full moon in about an hour and a half's time. This full moon is pretty healthy. It's not really impacting or aspecting any planet in the sky significantly. It's fairly close to where Jupiter will be soon enough. It's reasonably close to galactic center, but it's not a big deal. It's not touching anyone or anything majorly that's going to cause any new problems. It's acting big time in my chart. It's on my North Node, which is why it's not why, but it happens to be coincidentally aligned with the fact that I'm off to San Francisco in 48 hours. I am replying to everyone today. If you've not had an email from me today, you will have in the next 24 hours. For those people who have been in touch with me about readings, I still have, I'm about 60% sold out, but I've still got about 15 spots left. So if you want a reading with me in San Francisco over the period of the 20th to the 30th of June, just drop me a line at steve@stevejudd.com. Now, this full moon, it's reasonably close enough to galactic center, so this is where I'm going to go off. I'm going to go off on one. All right. So if you don't want to hear me ranting, just switch off now. As many of you know, I'm into a phenomenon called eschatology, which is that study of the part of theology in human history that deals with notions of the end of the world. Now, it's not going to happen the way that Orthodox religion would have it. That's just so old history. It's irrelevant in the modern world. A few days ago, I was talking with a fellow eschatologist in Chicago. You know who you are. And you you asked me some questions about whether astrology is still going to be valid in 20 years and how the future is evolving. That really made me think, and it made me sort of access lots of old ideas that hadn't circulated in my brain for years. So here's an update on where I stand on this. It's a fact that when I was born, there were 2.1 billion people alive on the planet at that time. There is now 7.5, nearly 8 billion people on this planet. So in my lifetime, the population of this planet has more than trebled. When I was born, technology was, if you were lucky, a little wooden box with a little grainy black and white moving screen in it. Now I'm talking to you via download, satellite, bounce, you name it. The world's at our feet technologically. When I was born, spirituality meant being frog marched to Sunday morning Sunday school at church. And now you've got to pick a mixed spirituality with so many different philosophies, theologies, you name it. There's so much out there. Population, technology and spirituality are all escalating in a kind of escalatory graph curve. It's not linear. It's not a straight line graph. It's an escalating graph. And they're approaching prime vertical. Serena Roney Dougal, one of my biggest influences, points out in her seminal book, Where Science and Magic Meet, that once a virus invades a bacteria, it will cover the surface of that bacteria until it consumes all of its resources, and then both host and bacteria will die, or there will be a mutation where the virus will develop into multicellular organisms requiring less space and less food, and then a symbiosis occurs. Now, I'm not suggesting this is going to happen like that to humanity, but her point is whether this happens at a viral level, bacterial level, molecular or atomic level, there's always the same ratio, that once the virus reaches a certain number, then the mutation will occur, however the mutation is. And that number is always 10 to the power of 10 billion. Humanity is already at the power of 10 to 9.75, because we've got 7.5 billion, 8 billion, 10 to the power of 9.8. We're very clear, nearly there. And current projections suggest that we will hit 10 billion people on this planet somewhere around between 2030 and 2033 if we carry on growing at the same rate. So this all makes me question, okay, what's the implications for the long term for humanity, and particularly from my perspective, how can astrology work in this and assist with this transformation? Astrology is a really good tool for timings. It's not so good for predicting events, but there is this thing around timing. And it's certainly an excellent tool for self-knowledge and self-reflectiveness. It seems to me, when I was born, there wasn't organic food. We all just lived out of food grown in the garden. Since the advent of processed food, the consequent rise of lifestyle diseases has become endemic, almost pandemic. Consequently, the drug and pharma trade, as opposed to herbal medicine, has also become pandemic. This has resulted in a weakening of the genome. And although humans are now living much longer than they've ever lived before, thanks to chemical medicine, the bodies are becoming ever so slightly weaker and weaker with each consequential generation. Except for those who really may go out their way to feed their children good quality, healthy food and not processed junk. I'm being very generalised here, of course. So it seems to me that the body is failing as intelligence is rising. Now, to quote Terence McKenna, human history represents such a break in the systems of biological organisation that preceded it that it must be the response to some type of attractor or dwell point that lies ahead in the future. There's never been a species on planet Earth in 6 billion years of history, 1 billion years of history, that has the capacity that we have for self-recognition, self-reflectiveness, humour, laughter, seeing oneself and recognising oneself in mirrors. No other species can do this. Possibly cats and dolphins. Dolphins are pretty amazing creatures. It seems that although I'm quite happy about the idea of our physicality as having emerged on the evolutionary chain as a result from years, millennia of tweaking ourselves to get to this point of physicality where we are now, the intelligence we have is not something that would occur naturally in nature. Nature speaks much more in terms of harmony and flowing organically with things, not in terms of being able to do mathematics and create geometric shapes to the degree of perfection that we can. The only possible way that our intelligence could have evolved naturally and organically would be as a result of taking some type of accelerant, such as mushrooms, which has happened over the millennia many, many times. I'm not recommending it, obviously. Seems to me that we're heading towards some type of omega point of transcendence, but we're heading into the very, very fine end of the inside of the pencil sharpener. And that once we hit that point, we'll then come out the other side into glory. We'll suddenly expand. So it's going to be not so much a breakdown as more of a breakthrough. But what does that mean? I think in the short term, and by short term I mean the next 50 years, it's going to lead to some fundamental changes in the way we use our brains. And we're going to expand consciousness in a way that's going to give us a great deal more empathy, sensuality and appreciation for each other and the environment. This is presuming we get there and that big pharma, climate chaos and the suppression of human rights doesn't defeat us first. Pandemic isn't going to happen, or if it is, it's not going to take out anywhere near enough people to make a big difference. It can't. There's so many people now. long term, way beyond the lifespan of anybody who's alive at the moment. But in the long term, 300-400 years, with the acceleration of technology, with the development of AI, and with the accentuating increase of climate chaos, this planet is becoming toxic. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if governments all collectively agreed to stop pumping crap into the atmosphere and we all went electric through wind power and solar power? Wouldn't that be lovely and wonderful? Not going to happen. Not in enough time to make a difference, because it's driven by greed and power. And that's not going to change overnight, because certain individuals want to make money at the expense of others, and they don't give a damn about their children, their grandchildren, or the future of the planet, as long as they make money. So, humanity will survive, but I suspect that there's going to be some type of genetic tweaking at some stage in the future, where the human genome will be tweaked to adjust for the changing climate. And from there, it's not that small a jump to the idea of us becoming kind of like ghosts in the machine and downloading consciousness. I could see a time in the future where we actually don't need our bodies anymore. We either download our consciousness into constructs, not cyborg, but similar, or even more, where we become creatures of pure thought. Like we already have the cloud. A lot of my stuff is in the cloud. A lot of everybody's stuff is in the cloud these days. So cloud consciousness, where we still retain identity and individuality, but not corporality. Now I'm rambling here, but this is a potential for the future. We seem to be on a scale in a state of accelerated evolution towards some type of purpose. Now, the powering force behind this, some people call it God, other people call it the universe. It could be random. But how come humanity has developed this type of intelligence that's never been seen on this planet in 1 billion years of history, and we are a drop in the ocean in time compared to that 1 billion years? How come we're changing so rapidly now? This is the most exciting time in human history. It may be my projection that God is lonely. Certainly we're switching to a much more feminine way of dealing with the world, and the intelligent people are embracing their femininity regardless of gender. Something's happening, and we either go with it or we fight against it. And this is the difference between human beings and humans being. There's a revolution in consciousness happening, so you either flow with it or you don't. And that's where astrology is so important, because it's a really good metaphor for understanding oneself and for putting oneself in the right place at the right time. San Francisco, I'm on my way. I'll be there in 72 hours. Drop me a line if you want a reading. Sorry about the... Well, no, not sorry. Proud of the rant. Catch you next time, world. Bye.